Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming in person today to the official launch of the updated and improved DATA2GO.NYC platform. With the buzz in this room, I can tell I'm going to leave this live event feeling energized, and I hope you will too. I think we all could use some energizing events in these days. I think we also all could use more access to reliable data in these days. And that data is available at DATA2GO.NYC. Thank you. My name is Tracy Perizzo, and I am the New York City Program Officer at the Helmsley Charitable Trust. Helmsley is a foundation with 6 program areas that each uniquely focus on better access to healthcare, research, and overall improving well-being for the people we serve, no matter where they live. In our New York City program, my colleagues, Emily, who's here today, Anna, and Sarah, thank you also for coming, we focus on largely housing for health and other services to help New Yorkers with complex health and social needs live better lives. This project is funded as part of our field strengthening work for our New York City program, making data available for more on New Yorkers for more improved services, research, and anything else people need to do to solve some of New York City's biggest problems. I remember the first launch of Data2Go. We were sitting in a room much like this. I think it was at Civic Hall. And I was sitting next to one of the inspirations for this tool, Tamara, who might actually be here today. I don't see her yet, but and our then CEO and our current CEO, Sarah, joins us today as well. Thank you for coming. We were all so excited, and we watched transfixed as Kristen Lewis here and her data team effortlessly floated over a map with their cursor and showed us the data coming to life in each of the different regions in the city. It might have been actually my first day in philanthropy. I had been excited by it, but I also was shuddering a little bit because I remembered just probably the week prior finishing what was the last, thankfully, of many state applications on the service provider side, trying to make the case for more shelter beds in one part of the city. And I remember every time having spent days or maybe weeks with exported spreadsheets of endless numbers of data sets, trying to figure out something like, how do you compare the poverty rate on that block that's only available by census tract, by heads of household, to that block that happens to be sitting in the community district area and cut by family. And so some of you are nodding your heads, you might be familiar with this. So many maths and maps and weeks later, I only hoped that what I came away with was an apples to apples comparison that made some sense. We were pretty successful with most of our applications, thankfully, but these are weeks of my life that I'll never get back. So that was the shudder that I expressed. And that task is exactly what data harmonization is. And that data harmonization is available at Data2Go for over 350 indicators about health and well-being in New York City. So whether you're a service provider, a journalist, a researcher, a policymaker, this updated platform is going to excite you, and I promise you it's also going to save you time. So we couldn't be happier about it, and with that, I want to introduce the team responsible for this. But before I do, I want to challenge each of you, at least for 1 minute when you leave this room, think about nothing and worry about nothing than what you're going to do with all your saved time that you're about to have. Try that. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Kristen Lewis, who's the data magician responsible for all this, and the director at Measure of America at SSRC.
So thank you so much, Tracy, for the gracious introduction, as well as for the incredible support over the last 2 years, and for the faith that you and your colleagues at the Helmsley Charitable Trust have shown in the project from the start. And the start was now nearly 10 years ago. To have such a steadfast philanthropic partner is rare, and we feel incredibly fortunate. I have a lot of thanks, which will mostly come at the end of today's event, but I don't want to be like one of those unfortunate people on award shows who realize as the music is playing them off that they've forgotten to thank their mom or like the most important person. So before I continue, I want to acknowledge and thank from the bottom of my heart the creative, skilled, kind, intrepid, generous, and dedicated Measure of America team. Alex, Kara, Tara, and Kate, will you please stand up or wave? So none of what you see today would be remotely possible without these 4 amazing people, and many others as well, but especially them. So today I'm just going to give an overview of Data2Go, the new one, and my colleague Alex Powers will give a live demo. Then we'll hear from our terrific panelists, Zach Hennessy, Meg Barnett, and Anila Kobo, and then we'll have a question and answer period, so also questions from all of you. Just a quick word about Measure of America if you are not familiar with the rest of our work. So we're a project of the nonprofit Social Science Research Council, and we work with partners to breathe life into numbers using data to identify areas of need, pinpoint levers for change, and track progress over time. We have 3 main areas of work. The first, we work with local partners to produce human development reports, which explore well-being in specific places using the American Human Development Index, which combines health, education, and earnings indicators into one measure. We also work in the area of youth disconnection. We produce widely used youth disconnection rates and annual reports on the topic. And we create online tools like Data2Go that allow people to map, visualize, and make sense of well-being indicators. So before I show you the new Data2Go, let's first say a proper goodbye, a fond farewell to our old friend Data2Go 1.0. So Data2Go brought together for the first time federal, state, and city data on a broad range of issues critical to the well-being of all New Yorkers. The website at that time included over 350 indicators for New York City's 59 community districts, and over 150 of these indicators were also available by census tract. And it had point data for literally thousands of facilities. At that time, as is true now, there were lots of great online data tools. Lots of things exist. But many were the product of one-time only efforts. Maybe they focused on just one issue or sector, or they were really tricky for regular people to navigate. In addition, as Tracy alluded to, different indicators were available using different geographic boundaries, time periods, definitions, interfaces, and methodologies. So this variety made it really hard to compare data across places. So we tried to make sure that Data2Go was intuitive and easy to use. It was designed to provide access to official government data for sort of data civilians, people who needed accurate, up-to-date information, but maybe didn't have sort of training in statistics and research. And all data were harmonized and presented by community district. It was comprehensive and multi-sectoral, with data from a range of sectors: health, environment, political engagement, and more, basically covering a wide range of issues that affect the well-being of everyday New Yorkers and shape the choices and opportunities open to them. It was sustainable, so it provided a snapshot of current realities alongside a commitment to update the data every year for at least 5 years. And it was transparent and rigorous. So it was an impartial, independent source for methodologically sound, reliable, and fully sourced data. So, goodbye, well, I'll tell you a little bit more about it, sorry. So Data2Go had literally tens of thousands of users over the years. I'll call out a couple. We had over 3,500 power users, people who downloaded the underlying data sets. 35 offices of New York City and New York State departments, agencies, and elected officials downloaded the data set. That was a very cool finding. A lot of times, the people downloading the data were the people who gave us the data in the first place, so that was also super cool. 50 New York area nonprofits received technical assistance using Data2Go through a partnership we had with Nonprofit New York, which was funded by the New York Community Trust. And 8 major New York City hospital systems use DATA2GO for community health needs assessment, including New York Presbyterian, Weill Cornell, and Sloan Kettering. DATA2GO also received many accolades for its design. Early on, we participated in the White House Opportunity Project, which challenged data designers to take government data sets and put them into forms that were easy for the public to use. We won awards for that twice. So here is a young Alex and a younger than now Kristen. We were at the White House for one of the first Opportunity Project gatherings. And here I am in 2019 holding a giant check for $20,000. We were the top prize winner that year. And DATA2GO was also featured at the Museum of the City of New York at a special exhibit called Who Are We?, which was held around the time of the 2020 census. And data journalists use DATA2GO to inform their reporting with some really striking results. So we had a partnership with The Trace looking at gunshot deaths in New York City, and we found that gunshot victims were most likely to die if they were shot in Queens. And the data also revealed that there were comparatively few trauma centers there. So community advocates and elected officials really picked up on this reporting. They lobbied hard, and the result was $150 million in investment to expand trauma services at Jamaica Hospital. So these are just a few examples. The data in DATA2GO were also used in testimony to City Council, generated front page stories on the New York Times and other places, was used for needs assessment, planning, and service delivery, and much more. So the old DATA2GO was the cat's pajamas. It was great, but the new one is even better. So we've updated all the indicators. We've added a bunch of new ones. We've revamped the design. We have new change over time indicators and visualizations. It's easier to share to social media and export the data. And most importantly, we have a new geography. So whereas before we were focused on the 59 community districts, now we have that plus 197 neighborhood tabulation areas. So that's great. There are 3 times as many as those, so you can get much more granular. So when you first go to DATA2GO, you'll have a chance to read frequently asked questions and access a tutorial in story form. Most people probably won't do that. They'll just go straight. So DATA2GO has several windows which allow you to view the data. The first one, the one you see now, is called Stat Explorer. Stat Explorer allows you to see how indicators vary across the city, and it shows this variation in a number of different ways, on a map, on a histogram, and in different kinds of infographics. So just to say one convention that we use throughout the website, so you'll notice probably during this presentation, is that darker colors represent more of whatever indicator you're looking at. So, and lighter colors represent less of that. So if the indicator is positive, something like on-time high school graduation, then darker colors are good news. If the indicator is negative, like smoking rates say, then the darker colors are a cause for concern. So that's just something you're going to see everywhere in the maps, in the data visualizations, and so forth. So the first thing you do when you come here is you choose the geography you want to look at. So in the top right there, in that red box, you're able to choose the geography you'd like to see. So you can choose borough, one of the 59 community districts which align with community boards, the neighborhood tabulation areas I mentioned before, 197 of those, or census tracts, and there are over 2,000 of those. So all the data aren't available at every geography, so the ones that aren't available, it will be grayed out for that. And so here I've chosen neighborhood tabulation area. The name of the indicator you've chosen will always appear below the map, along with a definition of the indicator and the sourcing. So here we're seeing the American Human Development Index. So that's where the name is. And it will define it, that it's a composite measure of health, education, and earnings indicators. And then it will have full sourcing there as well. So the place that you've chosen will be always on this right there, on the bottom right, of the map. And then you'll also see the place in this histogram on the side. And you'll see the place in this new kind of visualization we have called the bee swarm. This is new. We're super crazy about the bee swarm. Every dot represents, for this visualization, every dot represents one of 197 of New York City's neighborhoods. So you're seeing the place here, you're seeing it here, and you're seeing it there. If you want to compare two places or switch your location, you'll hover over a different geography and it will turn pink. And this allows you to look at two places in comparison to one another. And the pink points in the bee swarms also will add. So this is just a good way to sort of move around and see where you are. And Alex will show you how this looks live. When you click on a new variable, the map will change to show that variable, and the color will also change to map the category that the variable is part of. This helps you navigate the site because now we have over 450 indicators and thousands of point data, so it's helpful to have some color coding so you can make sense of where you are. So here we've clicked on life expectancy at birth. That's how long a baby born today can expect to live if current patterns of mortality continue throughout that baby's lifetime. So the map now shows that indicator, and the histogram and the map both turn red since it's a health indicator. As always, darker colors are more. So in this case, more years of life, so it's good news. And the range of life expectancy within the city, which you can see on the bee swarm in particular, is really vast. So from just 73.6 years in Brownsville to 91 years in Stuytown. It's a kind of a heartbreaking chasm of more than 17 years. There are a few different ways to find an indicator. One way is to just scroll down on the side of the page, on this side of the page. So all of this, So all of these, you just scroll endlessly. So all the indicators are there. It's a great way to procrastinate. You can just feel like you're working, but you're really just scrolling. But at least you're not scrolling on TikTok, so it's better for you, we think. So another way is to click through the categories at the top. So up here, there's always going to be this set of different categories for the indicators. I'll just go through them. So here's education. We have things like school enrollment and chronic absenteeism. Here is work and wealth. So there we have things like unemployment, median personal earnings. And this is a really great use of a good example of why the bee swarm is so useful. We've chosen for this the financial district, and no surprise, that's where the highest median personal earnings and the highest household income are. And you can, So there they are. And so you can see the huge gap. You can see the top earning place is so far from the others, and that actually most neighborhoods are clustered in the bottom half. So it's very helpful for understanding the distribution and the outliers. And then we have safety, so that has crime data, of course, but it also has other things that make us less safe, like air pollution, environmental hazards, traffic accidents, and things like that. So it's sort of safety broadly considered. Civics are things like voting, registration, things like that. And the physical world combines environmental indicators like air quality with infrastructure indicators and other things about the built environment. So it has, a lot of things there. So a new and exciting feature on Stat Explorer is the ability to visualize change over time. So we won't have that for every indicator, but we have it for about a dozen indicators. Right now, we're seeing the American Human Development Index and change from 2013 to 2022, so about a decade. So those gray lines that you see, each one represents a community district. That's the view we're looking at, community district right now. And the district you select turns black. And the blue line that's there is the New York City average. So this one, New York City average, and also here's the New York City average as well. So we always try to show the New York City average in some way, and it's blue most of the time. Okay, so this allows you, and when Alex shows, he'll show you how when you move the cursor, different places turn pink, the map changes. It's very exciting. But here you also are able to look at the 10 places that have changed the most, have the largest change. So the one that it is, this black line here, is Long Island City. I don't think that would surprise anybody, right? There's been tremendous transformation of that neighborhood over the last decade. And then you can also see the smallest change. The smallest change is in the Bronx, in Tremont, Belmont, and West Farms, where the well-being score actually fell about 5% between 2013 and 2022. It had the lowest score in 2013 and also the lowest score today, unfortunately. So in addition to having the area data that appears on the map, we also have point data. So that's point or facilities data for thousands of indicators, thousands of entities rather. So for schools, libraries, waste transfer stations, parks, a bunch of different things. So what we've done here is we've turned on point data for charter schools. So the map is showing the concentration of charter schools by neighborhood. Then the histogram here counts up the number of facilities in the different places. So you can see which places have a lot of charter schools and which places have few charter schools, or which have a lot of shelters and which ones have few. So it's hard to see, but each of these red dots is an individual dot, not a mass. So let's zoom in. So we're going to zoom in to Bed-Stuy East, and we're selecting one of the points to see the data for. So when you click on a point, this little box here, a box like that will appear, and it will tell you about that particular place. So for this one, it is the Bronx Excelsior Charter School, and we know now the number of students who are enrolled, as well as the share of 8th graders and 3rd graders who are proficient in math and proficient in English. Suppose we want to change the background to, instead of an educational indicator, we want to see something else that's back there. So we have scrolled up to core stats, and we've chosen the population, the share of the population that's white, okay? So again, keep in mind the convention that darker colors represent more of something, lighter colors less. So the places that are light on the map have fewer white residents and more Latino residents, more Black residents, more Asian residents. So what really jumps out is we see that the neighborhoods with high shares of white residents have vanishingly few charter schools, whereas neighborhoods with mostly Black and brown residents, especially in the Bronx and central Brooklyn, have tons of them. So if you were curious about charter schools, how well they're doing, who are they serving, this would be a helpful data point for you. So we've talked a lot about how to find indicators by scrolling, by going across the bar at the top. But there's also always this guy at the top, the magnifying glass, which will allow you to search in another way. So here is what you'll get when you click that. So you can search by indicator name. So we started typing in turnout, and the things with that in it will appear. So we'll choose this. We've chosen voter turnout, so it brings us to the civics page to show us voter turnout as well as other indicators that are related to it. So we can also search by, say, place. So we've typed in the zip code 11201, the zip code for our office in Brooklyn Heights, and so then that will take you to that place. It will zero in on that place. So those are the main views of the Stat Explorer. So now let's switch to another page. So to switch from one page to the other, we have this hamburger menu up there in the top, and that will allow you to switch views. And it will show you the choices. So you have Stat Explorer, Neighborhood Explorers, a bunch of different things. You just choose that. So we have now chosen Neighborhood Explorer. So whereas the Stat Explorer allowed you to see a single indicator mapped across the city in the different bee swarms and different infographics, this one focuses on a single neighborhood. And so the Neighborhood Explorer focuses on a neighborhood, and it brings together a host of other indicators to create sort of a dashboard for you. So as before, we have a city map and a histogram to situate the place, both in terms of physical space, where it is in the city, and in terms of where it is in the distribution. So, these guys we have still. But we also have on this page, we help orient users to where they are in the city with these little drawings like this. And so there's a unique drawing for every place. And this is just helpful if you're going back and forth between two places and you just want to remember. You're like, oh, I'm looking for the big globe from the World's Fair in Queens for this neighborhood. So just as before, we have the indicator categories across the top. So, you can go to health and see a dashboard. You can see things like health insurance, vital statistics, health behaviors, like binge drinking, which is what Measure of America team is going to be doing after this event, probably. We're all very tired. We have education, so we have things like youth disconnection, absenteeism, and so forth. For work and wealth, we have indicators like earnings. We also have the poverty measure. Of course, we have the New York City CEO poverty measure, which is the superior measure, so we've listed that first among the poverty measures. For safety, again, we have things like burglaries, but also things like traffic injuries. Here we have, again, voter turnout, and we also have facilities so the facilities I mentioned before, they're also grouped on these pages. So we have things like voting, but we also have what the city gives to its citizens in terms of like public services, community facilities, and things like that are also included in this civics category. In terms of the physical world, we'll have things like commutes, land use, walking distance to a park, all kinds of indicators like that. So in our old iteration, when you made a dashboard like this, you had to drag in the indicators. There were no prepackaged indicator sets like we have now. So a lot of people wanted that, which is why we have it. But then there are people who really want to be able to create their own dashboard. So you can still create a custom dashboard. You choose this little guy at the end. So here we've populated a custom dashboard about young people, for instance. So we have data on youth employment and youth disconnection, school enrollment, child health outcomes like asthma, and more. So you can do that for anything. If you want to have a children one, if you wanted to have one that was just your own idiosyncratic concerns, you could make your own dashboard and see how it varied across the city. So this is yet another view. This is the comparisons view. This is an exciting new view. It will take a second to explain, but I think you're going to really like it. So before we had a comparisons view that had just this, the scatter plot, and also this, which explained the relationship. So what the comparison view tells you is what is the relationship between two indicators. So right now we're looking at two indicators, commutes 60 minutes or more, and the share of the population with high blood pressure. Okay, so we see, this is the color key. So basically places where there's high blood pressure, but short commutes, those are going to be that dark blue color. Places with a long commute time, but low blood pressure, in terms of the overall population, the share of the population, those are going to be red. But the places where both of them are high are going to be purple. So it will be this sort of light purple color and then also this dark purple color. So, so that helps you make sense of the map. You can very easily see places that have both high blood pressure, concentration of high blood pressure, and also long commutes. Here is a paragraph describing the relationship you're seeing. So it says there's a strong positive correlation between commute more than 60 minutes and the share of the population with high blood pressure. As the commute 60 minutes increases, share of the population with high blood pressure also tends to increase. So we also want to caution, of course, that correlation does not cause causation. There's a little box there. You can click on it and you'll get a big lecture about how they are not the same. Even though it's so tempting to say, of course they're the same. Look how they're correlated. But don't. So we've warned you about that. And then again, we still have the scatter plot. And we have also the R value for people who really know about statistics and for whom that's going to be a meaningful thing. We have that for you. So the way you choose indicators is this is a drop-down menu at the top. So right now it says commute 60 or more minutes and high blood pressure, but we might want to change it. So say we start typing, we're typing Spanish. We start typing it and we get this one. We get speak Spanish at home. We want to talk about voting, so we start typing voter. And we then get this new correlation. So we're correlating voted once, at least in the last 3 years, with speak Spanish at home. And what we see is that there's a strong negative correlation between speak Spanish at home and voted once in the last 3 years. And then you can see the places, where this is true, where there's a lot of Spanish speakers and where people have not voted in the last 3 years. And you see there's not so much purple because, again, there's this strong correlation between them. So this would be useful to you if you were, and Nilla will be talking about some of this when she speaks, but if you were trying to create an information campaign for voters in Spanish-speaking areas, you would be able to target from this map. Okay. All right. So then we have a final way to view data, and this is through the Demographic Explorer page. This is a new one for us. So basically, what we're seeing is we're seeing the median personal earnings is the indicator. So we see that on the map. We see that in the histogram. And we see it in each one of the bee swarms. But each one of the bee swarms shows a different slice of the population. Okay, so and the Upper West Side is chosen. That's the place we've picked. So if we look at the top bee swarm, this one, that's showing us median personal earnings, the range for all residents. So everybody who lives there, you're there. And so it goes from the place, the community district with the lowest median personal earnings to the place with the highest. We've chosen the Upper West Side, and median personal earnings for all residents is about $95,000 there. So median personal earnings is the wages and salaries of all workers age 16 and above. So it might look a little bit low to you. You might think, oh, those people are earning $1 million. And remember, it's the median, which is the middle point in the whole distribution. It's not the average, which would make it higher. But then let's look at the range just for women. So that's this one, the second one. And if you look at that, you see some interesting thing. The first thing is that the whole bee swarm is shifted down, right? It's shifted to the left. And that's because the range of earnings for women is less than the range of earnings for all residents. So women on the Upper West Side have median earnings of only about $83,000. So all residents was around 95, women 83, so that's a big difference. Then if we look at the third bee swarm, male earnings, the opposite happens. So here the earnings range shifts to the right. It's higher than the range for all residents and much higher than the range for women. So men on the Upper West Side have earnings of $117,000, the typical worker. So that's about $34,000 more than their female neighbors. When we look at the range for Asian residents, which is this one, we see a much wider range of earnings. So the lowest earnings are lower than the earnings for all New Yorkers, and the highest earnings are higher. So it has a huge range. So if we're looking at just Upper West Side residents who trace their heritage to Asian countries, we have about $119,000 of median personal earnings. For Black and Latino residents, these bee swarms here, we see two things. One is that the values are really clustered in the bottom half of the range of the bee swarm, of the distribution, and earnings on the Upper West Side are only about $45,000 per year for both of those two groups. And then last but not least, we have some data stories. So the data stories will be on the page right now. We're only putting one up. The data stories about the American Human Development Index. The reason we only have one up right now is that we want people to do this one because it kind of gives you a tour of the whole site. As you click through the data story, it will take you to different kinds of visualizations. It will sort of show you how to navigate. It will also explain to you the American Human Development Index, which is our sort of marquee indicator. But over time, we're going to be putting up more and more. So later this week, we're going to put up one on life expectancy and on-time high school graduation. And probably every month, we'll refresh with a new story. And we also want to represent your story. So if you've done something with Data2Go and you have a cool story to tell, we can work with you to put it up on the website. All right, so that is it. This is more of the data story. That's it for me. So now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Alex Powers. And Alex is the Associate Director of Measure of America. He's been with the organization for a long time. When he first came out of college, he worked for us as a program assistant. Then he went back to school and did other things. But, it's like the Hotel California. You can check out, but you can never leave Measure of America. So we lured him back, and here he is now as the Associate Director.
Thank you. I was looking forward to using that. All right. Thank you, everyone. So we're going to give a quick jaunt through Data2Go. Not an odyssey. There could be hours we could spend on this tool, but I just want to give you a sense of how it operates in the real world. So I've already loaded DATA2GO.NYC. I'm going to immediately click out of this pop-up. And, if you come from an earlier generation, you might, oh, thanks, Laura. Very key. How do computers work? How should I get it? Okay. Thank you so much. I just, no, it's the Chrome. Yeah.
I'll put it back up.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's all right. Thanks. So you can tell that we really love the bee swarm. Oh, thank you. Okay. Now, sweet. That's hoping that work. Okay. Yes. I hope no one read through Kristen's browsing history. Not that there's anything, that you shouldn't, but okay. Do you have the laser? Oh, thank you. Thanks. Okay. Sorry, we were trying this yesterday, and the red laser wouldn't work, but they've got a green one in the green room, which shows up really great. So I'm going to start by, it's a little bit tricky because I can't see it on the computer, so I have to, but don't worry, we'll get through it. Okay. I don't know where we are, so I'm going to try and find the green space. Okay. Thank you. I've lost the ability to click the screen. I don't know. I can move the mouse, but I can't.
Oh, strange. Okay, this is an unforeseen technological problem.
I can just turn the computer around and show you in the. Is the clicker? So it's in Chrome. It's just like there's no more slides.
It's no more slides. Yeah.
So we can just.
So while this is going on, I just want to say that, Kristen, yesterday we were practicing, and I was trying to think of a TikTok joke, but she swooped in and made an excellent TikTok joke, and I can't top it. But, I'm from a pre-TikTok generation, and our colleagues like Rick Gordon realized this too, that you can't control F. To make the site load quickly, that you only see just like a small snippet of information. So if you go to control F,
Okay.
you'll be blocked and redirected to, thanks so much. So it's mirrored now.
Yep.
Thanks. So if you try to do, perfect, control F, it will take you to the search. So that's some sort of choice architecture we've done. Green space. Okay, and you can see that, thanks so much, that it's got some sort of fuzzy matching. So if you misspell an indicator name, it'll pop up, green markets. That's pretty close to green space. And it'll always put those above a location. But if you scroll down, you'll see us. And there we are. This is really helpful because there's detail underneath here that lets you see the borders of these geographies, right? Not everyone knows the borders of their neighborhood tabulation area, but they really are the Goldilocks geography that the Department of City Planning created in between the census tract, which is quite small, and the community districts, which are huge. So here I am. I'm going to scroll down, show you part of this infinite scroll. And now it's taking too long, so I'm going to go to education. I want to put myself in the persona of someone who, let's say they work at a nonprofit dedicated to providing New York City students with access to technology, computers, internet, so on. And as Kristen mentioned earlier, the map won't change frantically as you're scrolling. You have to click into an indicator in order to have the map change and have that data load in. So you can do that by clicking on this little icon or the title or on one of the dots. So I'm going to pick here math proficiency rate. And it's zooming me into this neighborhood. I might not have wanted to go here. I can go to reset zoom, and that zooms the map out again and brings me back home. But I'm going to continue focusing on, and if you do see gray spaces, that's because the data are not available for that area. So back to Soho, and then I'm going to scroll down a bit more, and you can see that as you scroll, these different subcategories light up. So I'm going to go to resources, and then down here we've got digital connectivity, broadband internet, and you can see, again, I'm going to zoom out again, there's a huge range, right, from areas where 9 in 10 houses have broadband to below 1 and 2, right? And even in Manhattan, there's a huge range between the lower Manhattan and unfortunately we're frozen again. But nope, just a little slow. All right. So just a huge range between where we are now and East Harlem, where 6 in 10 households have access to fast, sort of table stakes internet. If I wanted to download this map, I can go to export share. I could say, include the description of, the sourcing and the year and so on, the highlighted area. I'll put my email address and download. I download the image and the Excel file. Bear with me, I'm gonna try this out and see what happens. Okay. I promise you there's an Excel file that downloaded as well as an image, but it's not the end of the world. Okay, yeah, here we go. So there's the Excel file, and there's some pictures, and that's of us at a different conference, but and then one of where we were just in Houston with Kara. Hi, Kara. This is the data, this is the visual, and you saw that Excel file, so you know it exists. I'm sorry this is taking a bit longer, it's a bit finicky, but basically, to just show you the hovering feature that Kristen talked about, I'm going to go to on-time high school graduation, which we got through a special data arrangement with the New York City Department of Education. It took a long time to get that going. Kara has to use this incredibly James Bond style encrypted drive to access it, where like each time you put in a number to unlock the drive, it changes the location of all the numbers on the anyway. So it took a long time to get this data, but it's super interesting. It's what generated the New York Times story way back when, and you can compare it to neighborhoods by hovering. If I wanted to compare it with another indicator, I can go to export share. Oh, sorry. I was really eager to show you that earlier, but we're going to compare. That brings us to this connections view, and it's already preloaded on-time high school graduation. If I want to pick something else, maybe broadband, I can type it in or scroll through all of this, but I'm going to just type it in. It's always harder to spell when you have a lot of people watching you. And you can see that there's a moderate positive correlation between on-time high school graduation rate and broadband internet. And we say as it increases, as it as on-time high school graduation rate increases, broadband internet percent of households tends to increase. And then we have our little snippet and then the longer sermon there. But, no, that was a mistake. And yeah, just like Kristen said earlier, that sort of lavender is where both are low. I'm going to zoom out, reset zoom. And you can see there's concentrated areas in the city, South Bronx especially, where internet access is low, on-time high school graduation is low. And this tool is really useful to see that kind of relationship and to identify outliers. Maybe there are some neighborhoods with great internet, but really low levels of on-time high school graduation. And like we said, it's not like having a long commute will increase your blood pressure, although it certainly feels like that. We just wanted to show you how this works, and we could spend a whole lot of time on this slide, but I'm going to end now. Thank you all, and for bearing with us, for the tech issues. Oh yeah, all right, let's try to go home. Close this, and PowerPoint, all right. Oh, to yours, of course, yeah. Okay, presenter, view. All right.
Wow.
Well,
Okay. This feels high stakes, friends. I appreciate your patience. So now we are going to hear from our wonderful colleagues. I'm going to stand on this because I'm short. So we have three great speakers who are going to talk a little bit about how they use data and how they will use this data and why data matters to their sort of area. So we have Zach Hennessy. Zach is the Chief Strategy Officer at Public Health Solutions and Executive Vice President of the Whole U NYC Network. Zach is a health and human services leader with more than 15 years' experience partnering with New York City communities to advocate for just policies, secure critical resources, leverage innovation, and create opportunities that advance health and health equity. We also have with us today Meg Barnett. Meg Barnett is Senior Consultant at CFAR. She has spent almost 30 years working with complex social justice and nonprofit organizations to achieve their goals more effectively and with better clarity and alignment around their mission, values, and strategies. Meg has worked with nonprofits focused on social services, arts and culture, workforce development, healthcare, education, parks and open spaces, community organizing, public policy advocacy, and more. And Meg was our partner with the Learning What Works data classes that I mentioned earlier today. Anila Cabo is the Director of Voter Language Services at the New York City Civic Engagement Commission. She oversees the Voter Language Assistance Program, which expands language access for limited English proficient voters who speak program-eligible languages. She leads efforts to raise awareness about voting rights and the voting process within the program-eligible limited English proficient communities. So I'm going to start with Zach.
Thank you so much to Measure of America. It's been a wonderful time with Kristen and Alex and the team serving as an advisor for what you have just seen with Data2Go. And it's just incredibly inspiring to see many of the changes that we talked about in the room come to life in such a tangible and visible way. I want to talk a little bit about why we measure. We really measure because we want to improve quality of life. We want to improve everyday conditions in which we live and work. And we measure to solve problems and even save lives. And so I want to share a personal story about how I got into this work. I lost my mom. She was when I was 5. She was 31 years old. She died of a condition called rheumatic fever. This condition was detected, well, not this condition, but abnormalities were detected early on in her pregnancy with me. And she was advised to see a cardiologist. She and my dad were uninsured. They were unstably housed, and they had a new baby. So she unfortunately never made it to that cardiologist. And by the time she sought help for her health, it was an emergency, and she required open heart surgery, which she did not survive. And this is sadly the story of millions of Americans whose lives are cut short due to unmet needs for health insurance, for food support, for housing support. And so I just want to do a little exercise, which I often do, which is raise your hand if you have ever put off healthcare or delayed healthcare or missed healthcare for a condition that you have or a concern that you had about your health. It's almost everybody. Oftentimes it's economic or work related, or maybe it's family related. I have a toddler, so I know what that's like. Sometimes it's fear of how you're going to be treated. And sometimes maybe it's the bad system. You just don't want to deal with the potential costs or the bureaucracy of it all. What I'm trying to get at here is that the context in which we make our decisions about our health is really important. Life does not occur in a vacuum. The time and the place and the environment that you're in, all of that really matters. And so it's incredibly rewarding to work at an organization like Public Health Solutions, where we're at the intersection of public health and healthcare and social services. And it's incredibly exciting to have a tool like Data2Go to inform our strategy and to inform our planning. So Public Health Solutions really addresses the issue that we have in this city about the 10-year or greater gap in life expectancy that we see among these neighborhoods. And we do that by providing services directly in communities in critical areas like maternal and child health and food and nutrition. We also do that by partnering with government and philanthropy to administer portfolios of work on behalf of community-based organizations and healthcare providers. And most recently, which I'll talk about how we use Data2Go, we were recently selected by New York State to serve as what's called a social care network for the boroughs of Queens, Brooklyn, and Manhattan. This is our latest evolution, and it's called Whole U NYC. And it's constituted of over 200 community-based organizations connected for real-time coordination and real-time collaboration to address unmet needs for food, transportation, and housing, those things that prevent people from engaging in preventive care, managing their chronic conditions, and avoiding turning to the emergency department or being hospitalized in acute circumstances. So in preparing to become that social care network, to become Whole U NYC, we used Data2Go. And we used it, and we plan to use it across all stages of our execution. So first I want to talk about the application because that was huge, but applying to support 2.6 million Medicaid members in Queens, Brooklyn, and Manhattan required us to do a lot of needs assessment and gaps analysis. So just for example, Data2Go allowed us to look not just at where there was high food insecurity, but where there was co-occurring lack of access to nutritious food and also low access to food benefits like SNAP that enable families to purchase food. So being able to look at those multiple indicators simultaneously allowed us to focus in and hone in on the neighborhoods and describe them in our application. This also supported our ability to estimate the capacity needs as we were bringing on partners to our application, understanding what potential volume of these new Medicaid food services would be needed for each of the communities that we represented. In terms of network development, we have to continuously look at kind of the organization capacity within our network and recruit new organizations to join and target capacity building funding resources to address critical needs. So for example, looking at home remediation, making modifications to the home that improve your health. How many providers do we have in a neighborhood that has the lowest housing quality and also the highest? How many housing organizations do we have where the housing or rental burden is the highest? And so looking at that when we decide where to allocate some of the resources that we have for capacity building and where to recruit new organizations. And third, in terms of evaluating our network, how adequate is our network and how well are we doing addressing people's needs? So here we can map our capacity data and the services that we're providing against the level of need that we're able to see in DATA2GO. So for example, how much access to pre-tenancy housing services did we provide in neighborhoods where there were high rates of family shelter residents? Lastly, these enhancements, so grateful and thankful for them. They're really incredible to see come alive. We asked for smaller neighbor tabulation areas, so you saw some of that. This will allow us to look at things on a much more hyper-local basis, and that's especially important because we're serving the disabled, the aging, and people with small children, and we know that those populations specifically cannot travel far to get the resources that we're providing. The longitudinal analysis will help us to recruit medically tailored meals providers in communities where we see chronic disease rates rising. And those chronic disease are an eligibility factor to receive medically tailored home delivered meals. And then with the correlations, how many organizations do we have who are, when you look at these correlations, it will help us make decisions about organizations who provide a very specific set of services for a specific population. For example, housing support for people re-entering their community after prison and jail. So we can look at what is the level of incarceration in a community against food insecurity, and that will help us make those kinds of decisions. So whether you are a community-based organization seeking grant funding or a government official thinking about how to allocate resources, or a lawmaker thinking about how a given policy is going to affect your constituents, there's the richness and the depth here for you to work on those kinds of complex problems. So this is an incredibly critical tool. Please use it. Please share it. And please help us support it and grow it for the future, because it's an incredible resource for our city. So thank you.
And so now I'll turn the floor over to Meg. to say a few words.
Hi, good morning. Good morning, is this working? Okay. Thanks so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here, and these are some tough days, huh? Anybody feeling like these are some tough days? Yeah? But you all woke up this morning and made an effort to be here. You made an effort to learn something new, to think about why you want to be here, how this tool could help your work. You thought about forward movement, and I just think that that's like round of applause for everybody here, because it is so easy and maybe even sensible to feel really scared and really stuck. I have a lot of conversations with nonprofit leaders, and what I'm hearing over and over again are, we're in a holding pattern, we're waiting to see what's next, we're just treading water. There's some belief that when X happens, they'll have the information they need to figure out what to do. I don't have any crystal balls. I barely understand the difference between causation and correlation. But I do think that I have some clarity around anybody who's waiting for things to get back to normal, or we're going to turn the corner, or things are going to settle down. That is not happening anytime soon. Change and uncertainty are the only things that we can count on. And so we got to go with that. Rebecca Solnit tells us that the fact we cannot save everything does not mean we cannot save anything, and everything we can save is worth saving. So that's the focus. And we got to think about moving forward differently. And a lot of that has to do, I think, with how we think about the way our nonprofit organizations work and what we think about as being success. It's not just about getting from point A to point B, or hitting this number of deliverables or this number of grant funds. We really, and maybe that never made sense as a way to measure success, but we did it. We can't do it anymore. We got to think about success and forward movement in terms of, this is terrible middle-age thing where you can't see if you have the glasses, but you can't read without the glasses. It's very hard. Okay, so thinking about success is about building organization with shared values and real clarity around mission. And teams that create and consistently cultivate, they're exercising those adaptive capacity muscles all the time. And it's about developing strategic partnerships that foster innovation, that acknowledge the intersectionality of the communities served. And so much of the richness of the Data2Go tool is about being able to think about the way that the community you serve and your partner serves are intersected and interrelated, and there are opportunities for strategic and collective impact. And I think that is really important when we think about how to use tools like this, because that is the way that we are going to create and strengthen the kind of solidarity and the kind of collaboration that we need to stand up together and push back on these attacks that affect all of us. Who's in the audience from human service organizations, arts and culture, social, workforce development, health, okay, healthcare, open parks? Okay. And a sense of organization size, less than 5 million? More than 5 million? Everybody else? Okay. I want to just talk a little bit about the Learning What Works program that we were really proud to do as a partner to Measure of America when I was the CEO at Nonprofit New York. All Also, in the interest, I understand that Measure of America is a completely nonpartisan 501c3 organization. I will mention that I left Nonprofit New York because it's impossible to lead a 501c3 organization and be involved in electoral politics. And my husband, Brad Lander, is running for mayor. So that is why I am consulting. And I will tell you that the civics information that we're going to hear about from Anna and the voter turnout and others are things that are very top of mind for me these days. Okay, so we partnered with Measure of America to build the capacity of nonprofit organizations, equipping them with the knowledge, tools, and resources necessary to leverage data effectively in pursuit of social change. And this is incredibly important, and I think that the importance of collecting this data can be really clearly demonstrated by efforts that are afoot right now to limit what kind of data we collect. Right? You can't manage what you can't measure, and you can't see the disparities if you don't collect the demographic information that you need to evaluate the disparities. And the folks who are not interested in the social change that many of the people in this room, I'm going to make an assumption, are very interested in saying the demographic information doesn't matter. And as you look at this DATA2GO tool and you see those incredible gaps and you see the overlays with the information about zip code and race and other things, they absolutely matter. And it's important that we acknowledge that. We put folks together. It was a cohort learning-based model. And at Nonprofit New York, we feel like that's really important, and it's an important way to think about how people learn, because one of the most effective ways that nonprofit leaders, and we heard this over and over again in the evaluation, is that they learn about data resources by seeing them in action by their peers. How is somebody else using it? How is that connected to my work? And we think it's really important to work across sectors in that, because that interdisciplinary perspective is important for all the reasons I said about collaboration and solidarity, right? You may run an open, your organization focuses on green space and parks and open space. The arts and culture organization that's in your neighborhood has a lot to do, there's a lot of overlap, and there's a lot of ways to think about how you can look at data together and how the lessons that you look from some of those beautiful overlaid square colored maps really can help both of you excel and expand your services. So let me just mindful of time, I just want to give a couple lessons that we heard from the folks who participated, and that for an organization to really embrace making data-driven decisions, it is a serious mindset change for the entirety of the organization, and it only works if there is buy-in across the board. That it is not just about a technological tool or a dedicated staff member. It really is about the entirety of the team understanding why we're measuring, as Zach said, and really interested in the so what questions that are presented by the data. I know far too many organizations that spend an incredible amount of staff time and energy in completing the dashboards. Has anybody spent any time on their dashboards, right? And then they're completed, and then they seem to go into a folder of some sort, and then they are completed again the next quarter. And I think the issue of is this a tool? When we look at this and we say, so what does it mean? You got to have the whole team interested in that and engaged in that, and you have to have leadership that's willing to have them push back on what's actually what the dashboards are telling you. So you need more than one person for the organization to be in charge. You can't wait until you have all the data you want in order to make a change. That's an often thing. Well, we're collecting, we're waiting to see the results, we're going to see. Well, first off, Data2Go tells you so much, but you can't wait until you've got the right amount of data. You have to give it context always. Painting a picture, so the infographics and that kind of, one of the things we heard from the program is that the visualization, the data visualization tools are what everybody felt like was most useful. It really helped them tell their story. And that story that they're trying to build is often built around the audience. So one more thing, do we have funders in the room? We have funders in the room who understand how important this is. So maybe I'm speaking to the folks not in the room, which may not be that useful. But this is a message that you can carry, and this is a message to funders. Data analytics is not a nice to have. It's not overhead. It's not part of administrative work. It is integrated, it needs to be integrated into our program. It is not an indirect expense. It is not something that nonprofits can do without. It is fundamental, and one of the big challenges facing the nonprofit sector is this false divide between program and overhead, which no other sector has to work in. I mean, the private sector totally understands it. This is fundamental to their success, and nonprofits are just the same. So when you're putting together the proposal, when you're talking to funders, this is not a like, oh, and if we could just have a little more so that we could take care of our data. It's like, this is fundamental to our programmatic success. If you as our funding partner want us to have a positive impact on this community, this is a really important tool. You have to have us fund the capacity to use it. So I encourage you to, okay, I'll save the rest, but thank you for being here. Thank you for the work that you do. And with all of the uncertainty, and all of the things, there's only one thing that I know for sure, and that is that we are definitely stronger when we're working together. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Meg. I appreciate it. And here you go. Yes? Do you want to stand or do you want to sit? Okay, there you go. It's the big green one. Yeah.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Is this working?
You have to put it right up by your mouth.
Is there a button somewhere? It's on. Okay. Good morning. Okay. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Anita Cobo, and I'm the Director of Voter Language Services at the New York City Civic Engagement Commission. Probably most of you haven't heard about the New York City Civic Engagement Commission before. We are a fairly new agency, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about how we integrate data in our programming, and more specifically in the Voter Language Assistance Program, which I oversee. So we were charged with enhancing civic participation and democracy in New York City. And so we have, we're charter mandated, our programs are charter mandated, and our mission is rooted in equity and accessibility for all New Yorkers, especially those that are underrepresented historically. And we're using data in our programming to make sure we're uncovering and addressing the barriers. Just to help you make sense of why the Civic Engagement Commission is addressing through the Voter Language Assistance Program the needs of some New Yorkers. So we have 23% of New Yorkers in New York City that are limited English proficient, and a total of citizens of voting age with limited English proficiency is 930,000. So we basically have to do with a very diverse community, and a large swath of the voter population, or those eligible to vote in New York City, are limited English proficient. So The Voter Language Assistance Program was created to address this gap. So we have the Board of Election Services for 4 major language groups. They provide services, but there's also this large population of citizens of voting age with limited English proficiency that do not fall under the Board of Election language provisions as provided by the Voting Rights Act. So the program was put together to serve voters with limited English proficiency in New York City that speak these 12 languages: Arabic, Bengali, Cantonese, Mandarin, French, Haitian Creole, Italian, Korean, Polish, Russian, Urdu, and Yiddish, with the caveat that for some of these languages in some jurisdictions, the Board of Elections still provides the service because so that these populations meet the Board of Election threshold. And we make sure, of course, not to duplicate the Board of Election services. And the total universe of, by using data, we end up with a total universe of program-eligible citizen of voting age with limited English proficiency of about 230,000. So the program works with data, with the American Community Survey data, to tally up the total of citizen of voting age with limited English proficiency that speak program-eligible languages in program-eligible jurisdictions. Again, I have to note that we're not providing services that the Board of Election provides, like Spanish, for example. The Board of Election is responsible for providing interpretation services in Spanish throughout New York City. So we have certain limitations. So based on the American Community Survey data, we come up with a total universe of citizens of voting age that we need to provide services for. And then we determine the % share for each of these 12 language communities. Then we move on, thanks to data, to analyze the total of citizens of voting age with limited English proficiency by language and location. So we look at the concentration of the citizen of voting age with limited English proficiency within election districts and assembly districts. And then, in turn, this allows us to select the poll sites and the language service that we should be providing in any election. You can see that Russian makes up about 40% of our services. So if we are to provide services at 100 poll sites for a specific election, it means that 40% of those services will go to Russian. I'm sorry, one second. And then you'll notice that for Chinese, because the Board of Election provides services in the boroughs with a majority of Chinese speakers, we only have like a small percentage. They make up 5% of our services because we're only providing services for citizens of voting age with limited English proficiency that speak Chinese in the Bronx and Staten Island. And therefore, because we're relying on data to come up with where our services are, we have the confidence that we're selecting the poll sites with the highest concentration of speakers of these languages in jurisdictions that we're allowed to provide the services. And we are also abiding by the % share of services that each of these communities, language communities, should receive based on, the % share of total universe of CVA LEPs that they make up. So it's definitely something that we use in this program. We have a publicly vetted methodology. We are constantly updating the data based on population change, and we're hoping that with Data2Go Civics now, we can improve one thing that's still not great in terms of the voter language assistance program, which is outreach. So we're hoping that with the new version of the Data2Go Civics and the layering of various factors, we'll be able to better strategize about outreach at the neighborhood level, community district level, and that we'll be able to to build better partnerships with community organizations. So data is definitely a tool in our toolkit to open civic pathways for New Yorkers, especially those that have limited English proficiency. Thank you.
Thanks so much. So we're just going to chat a little bit here, and then after 10 minutes or so, I'll open it up to questions that all of you might have. I think each of you has touched on this question a little bit in your remarks, but maybe if we could just draw out a little bit better. So all of you are advocates for a more equitable New York City, each in your own way, in your own sector. So how do you see this tool, and not just our tool, obviously, but sort of neighborhood level data really helping you move toward this goal for your own sectors? I can start with you, Zach.
Sure, thanks. I think I talked a lot about kind of how we can use it in planning, but I really echo what Meg emphasized about the importance of a tool like Data2Go in an era of potentially diminished resources and investment, where it becomes necessary to think about where are we able to have the most impact, where can we target kind of the most intersection, where are the greatest synergies for efficiency. So the longitudinal capability, the neighborhood tabulation area capability are recommendations I would have for our team when thinking about what to do as resources become potentially more constrained.
Great, thanks. What about you, Meg?
The attacks on DEI, this is not rhetoric, right? This is an attack on a value set, and it's attack on certain groups of people. Sorry, I'll get it close. I can do it. Thank you. Right? And in our work to recognize the inherent dignity of every human in every community that we serve, it requires us to ask really hard questions and look at the answers even when they're tough and we don't want to. We can't hide from them. And I think that it is about being clear about your organization's values and recognizing that centering equity, particularly race equity, not only in the work that the organization is doing, but also in the way the organization is doing the work, is absolutely fundamental. It's a condition of success for nonprofits. And that is not because I think that we are looking for gold woke stars or whatever it is. It's important because it is what makes an organization effective and impactful, sustainable, and accountable. And so I think that the one thing I would say is that there's been all this great conversation about how to use the Data2Go work in your programmatic work. But we have to think about these same kinds of questions and the same kinds of methodologies when we're thinking about nonprofits as employers. So you need to collect the information in your organization, in your team, and make sure you're asking the hard questions, right? What's pay equity look like in your organization? Look at promotions. look at promotions by gender and promotions by race. Who's getting promoted based on potential, and who has to have performance in order to qualify for a promotion, right? How do you do performance evaluations? These kinds of things internally. Ask yourself the same hard questions that you're asking about your programs and your work.
Great, thanks so much. And what about you, Anila?
Would you repeat the question?
Oh, sure. It was a long time ago. So I was saying that all of you are advocating for a more equitable New York. And how do you think this kind of data helps you in your area?
So, as I mentioned during my rush presentation, I'm sorry, we are like at the root of the New York City Civic Engagement Commission is making sure we are addressing inequalities, and we're bringing in underrepresented communities and encourage them and increase civic participation for all of these underrepresented groups. Like the limited English proficient New Yorkers and older adults. So it's not, the Civic Engagement Commission is not only about the voter language assistance program, right? We do participatory budgeting, we do capacity building for community boards, and we do coalition and partnership building through the so-called TREE neighborhood initiative that targets neighborhoods that were hit the hardest from COVID. So we are like addressing inequalities and using data to address the inequalities and solve solution is at the core of all of these programs. We definitely see value in the various indicators and combining those whenever we're designing the strategies, whether to have more people participate in the people's money, participatory budgeting, who are the people who are less civically engaged, right? This is a data that we're after, and this is a big inequality, and it's key, especially at a time like this, to leverage data, to look at educational attainment, to look at civic participation, language barriers, and try to provide, to come up with solutions and strategies that address these inequalities and bring those people into civic engagement, into the democratic process. So I'm hoping that we're going to be making a lot of use of City2Go data to address inequalities.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm a bit mindful of the time since all of you have so kindly come. I do want to give a chance for anybody who has any questions for us or for any of our panelists. So just if you have a question, just wave your arm about, and our WNYC colleague will bring you a microphone. And just say your name and organization if you can.
Yeah, hi, I'm Maddie Goodman. I work at the Department of Health here in New York City. I was curious for the Data2Go team about how you manage your data, how you collect and integrate it in such a way that it's usable and comparable. And also, like to that same point, how you manage stakeholder concerns about the representation of their data when you're integrating it, standardizing it, normalizing it so that it can be used in one platform.
Sure, that's a great question. I'm going to answer part of it, and then I'm going to turn it over to Alex to answer the rest. In terms of stakeholder engagement, for every project we have at Measure of America, we don't want to just cook things up in a lab and let them out. We really want to create things that are useful to people, that people can really use, that people feel that they have an ownership stake in. So we always have an advisory panel. So for the first Data2Go, we had a big advisory panel. For this one, we had, again, an advisory panel. Some of our advisors are here, including Zach, and I'll throw up the list of their names at the end. But so what we did for this, for instance, is we did a few meetings about, what do you like and don't like about Data2Go, Does it meet your needs? How does it not meet your needs? This is where the idea that more granular geography was really important. But of course, for health data, you really have to weigh the issue of how granular can you be when you have a lot of confidential data. We talked to experts about that, about those kinds of trade-offs. When we created the first sort of beta tests, we had lots of people testing our visualizations, not just people on our advisory panel, but just people we knew in our office or families or communities, like, does this make sense to you? When you see this, what does this tell you? So we do a lot of that kind of thing. In terms of the data harmonization, we are under a lot of, or the data use, we have a lot of data use agreements with different data providers in terms of how we have to store the data, who can use it. For instance, we are working on a project in California right now where we have death data and we're calculating life expectancy with that. Luckily, we were able to get life expectancy from you guys for neighborhood tabulation area, so thank you for that. But often we have to calculate it ourselves, so we'll get the death data. That's confidential information, especially like in a small county. So we have to be very careful. We have to encrypt the data. Alex was mentioning how Kara has to use the Department of Education data that we got to calculate on-time high school graduation rates by neighborhood, not by school. We have to, in the past, we would get sent CDs from like the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, and we'd have to break them in half when we were done using them at the end of the data agreement and send them back in pieces, things like that. So, and we take it very seriously. And so I'm just going to turn it over to Alex, who will talk about harmonization.
I think that was really comprehensive. I would just add that, we do provide transparent sourcing information.
Talk into the...
Sorry, I'm so used to not using a mic, and don't worry about it. It's okay. All right. So I think that, we try to make it as clear as possible that some data, like on air conditioners in households, that's from 2017. It hasn't been updated yet. We still keep it up there. The year is there, just so that that data, even though it's stale, is useful, we think. And for the health department's data, we do have people from the DOHMH on the advisory panel, and we are very sensitive to not giving people the wrong impression about conditions in their neighborhood.
Yeah, great. Thanks. So there.
Hi, my name is Jocelyn Chait. I'm a community planner, worked in various neighborhoods in New York City. So my focus is on comprehensive community-based planning. I had a question about how close, in terms of real time, for longitudinal data, is it possible to get for particular neighborhoods? For instance, if I'm looking at a range of indicators for a particular neighborhood and want to see the trends, maybe for housing, income, educational attainment, is it possible to sort of look over less than a 5-year period, depending on where the data is coming from, I guess? Is it possible also to do a deep dive, for example, like taking an ice core to show what's happened over time for particular indicators in that particular neighborhood? It's something that I think could be very powerful in community-based planning, not only for nonprofits, but also for the city as a whole.
Sure. So thanks. I'll answer part of it and knock it over to Alex again. In terms of the data and how fresh they are, we're used to seeing things like, the stock market, how it's closing every day, other economic indicators like GDP is coming out every quarter, things like that. But a lot of important data about people's well-being is only collected every year, for instance, through the American Community Survey, and there's always a lag. So, if American Community Survey is collecting data across, they do it at different points across, say, 2024, all the data isn't gathered up until the beginning of 2025, and it takes about a year to sort it out and clean it up and release it. So there's quite a lag with these really fundamental well-being indicators. That's a problem with all the data. You know, the Census Bureau is giving us the best data we have, but it's not perfect by any means. So that's always a problem. What we're doing in terms of refreshing the data, what we've done in the past, is basically every summer we do it. So if your data was you just released new data in June, then that's going to be the latest thing is going to be on DATA2GO if we're updating over the summer. But if it's something that's released in September, there might be more of a lag. In terms of longitudinal data, I'm going to turn it to Alex.
Yeah, so thank you. I mean, it's for some data sets it will be in a 1 year period, so you can look year. There are others that are going to be rolling averages, so there'll be like a 5-year roll-up of data, or for life expectancy, a 10-year roll-up. And that's just due to the requirement to make it a reliable, point-in-time estimate. Still directionally useful, and if you do have questions about like, is this a series change over time, we can email us and we'll try to help. I mean, there's other sort of statistical information that can help make that kind of determination, but I think that covers pretty much everything that we can say at this point.
Yeah. I mean, you always have to make a trade-off between timeliness and level of disaggregation, right? It would be great to have all the data available every year, but if you're looking at just a slice of the population, for instance, say you're looking at children by community district, that's not the whole population. Maybe that's just people under 18. And so often you will not be able to have a statistically reliable estimate for 1 year for that data. So what you have to do is roll it up and maybe get 5 years. So then you have all the children, you're having 5 years worth of data. You have enough data to make some sort of reasonable inference or statement about what's happening. But often there's this trade-off, this timeliness, granularity trade-off that we're always facing. So sometimes what we do is we do both. We maybe have the timeliness for a bigger population, for the boroughs or for the community districts, and then for the neighborhood tabulation areas, we might have, or the census tracts, we'd have like a 5 or 10 year roll-up. Okay. Yeah, there's one there.
Hi, my name is Matthew Montesano. I also work at the health department. I have a comment and a question, so just bear with me for a second.
Okay.
I want to compliment you on your use of the bee swarm plots. There's research that shows that when you, if you were to like aggregate those up for those by group comparisons that you showed, people interpret that in ways that reinforce stereotypes about those groups. And when you disaggregate them the way that you did, then it reinforces structural explanations for the differences by group. So I think it's really cool that that's how you're presenting those data. I'm not sure if that's what guided you. If it is, cool. And if it's not, happy coincidence. My question is about your design process. You've got great design and a lot of functionality. I'm really curious about the functionality or ways of presenting data or features that you weren't able to include for whatever reason, be they data, logistical, technological. I know from my own work, when you build a big product like this, it's hard to do everything. You have to make difficult decisions, and I'm really curious what some of those difficult decisions were for you.
Sure. So every day was a series of difficult decisions and trade-offs. There are really hundreds of thousands of indicators on here, if you include the point data. We had to really balance kind of every day this idea, do we really want to hammer down the functionalities, the core functionality, maybe have 1 or 2 different things that just always work, are super reliable, or do we want to see our dreams come true and have all these different pages and all these different functions? My team cannot let well enough alone. That's idea, don't make the best the enemy of the good. They just don't understand that. They're like, they are enemies, and we're on team best. So I would try constantly to get people to just focus on consolidating, and they just never would listen. So I think that's great, and that's, we were laying the tracks and driving the train at the same time up until last week. So, but in terms of what we wish we could do, I would have said it is the demographic explorer, because I didn't think it was going to be ready, and here it is. So we didn't have to make that trade-off, but I think it's really amazing to see the different ranges of different indicators. We don't have all the indicators we want in there, So right now we just have like a dozen or so that you can see that way. But this is a work in progress. We're going to be updating over the summer. So hopefully we'll have more and more indicators. We would love to have more change over time indicators. Again, we have a more narrow set of the change over time indicators right now, but we are constantly gathering and cleaning. There are big buckets of data all around our office, with signs on it, for next month or things like that. So in the end, probably we won't have that many trade-offs because we'll just do all the things. But we weren't able to do all the things by today, but we were able to do more of them than I thought, that's for sure. So yeah, and I think that there are certain things that we won't be able to do. People want more data for looking for causality, like they want data on certain populations over time. Our change over time data is about the people living in a place. So maybe they're the same people and maybe they're not, So Long Island City's Human Development Index score went way up. That's probably not because the people who lived there before at the beginning, because their life got much better. It's because a different population moved in. So sort of dealing with that is a challenge. And we would love to be able to look at things over time. I know that Robin Hood funds something with Columbia that looks at poverty, and that is a survey, and it is following the same people. So there are some ways to do that. We just aren't able to with the data we have access to. Yeah.
Hi, Maggie Beach, also from the health department. Love this. This is amazing. Tracy, as you went through Kristen, sorry. As you went through this, I'm just curious on a personal level, or anyone else can speak to this. Was there anything that surprised you? Like, this data is presented really well, really clearly. We do the maps in the health department, and we go, you can look at chronic disease, you can look at HIV, you can look at all this. It's the same neighborhoods, but there's really interesting different data in here. And was there something that you saw that you're like, oh, I hope someone picks that up and does something about that?
Sure. Well, the neighborhood tabulation area life expectancy data, which we have from you all, I think that is really arresting. When we started this project in 2007, we thought for our Human Development Index that we might have to have a more complicated health indicator like disability adjusted life years or something like that, because we thought, basic life expectancy, there's not going to be this huge range. And we found this giant 20-year range between Asian residents of New Jersey and Native American residents of South Dakota. So, we thought, okay, there's tons of variation. And here, by neighborhood tabulation area, it's a 17-year gap. So it surprises me every time and horrifies me every time. And I think that's data that more people need to know. We were looking at some data the other day on chronic absenteeism. There are places where 50% of the students in some parts of town have chronic absenteeism, which really struck us. We also did calculations of on-time high school graduation, not by the schools, not by the community districts or neighborhoods where the schools are, but where the students come from. So because of universal school choice, a lot of high schoolers don't go to school in their own neighborhood. But nonetheless, kids from different neighborhoods are directed more to different sorts of high schools, some of which have very high graduation rates. So kids from Brooklyn Heights, 100% of them are graduating high school in 4 years, whereas other parts of town, the rates are more like 70%. So that also was really striking. I probably have room for one. Oh, sorry.
I have an example.
Yeah,
it's when you bring in the civic engagement, because we have policy, we do have policy and advocacy work, so we're constantly trying to educate elected officials about the potential impact of a health policy on their constituents. And it's remarkable how oftentimes when you look at the health indicator targeted by a given policy, you see low levels of civic engagement among the population that is most affected by the policy. And so then it becomes a different kind of message for the elected official that is more like, how are you going to raise awareness with your constituents about this issue? But we rarely have the opportunity with most of the data sets that we use to look at the policy and advocacy implications, and the civic engagement data is a powerful way of doing that. But those are striking sometimes, how little civic engagement there was in the communities where a policy was going to have a big impact.
Oh, great. Thanks, Zach. That's a great example. I would love to answer all of your questions, but I'm mindful of the time, and I'm going to go wrap up. But Tara and Kate are there. Alex is there. Kara, wave your hand. She has the camera. And we're all here after, so any of us can answer any of your questions, I think. So I'm just going to go over here. My special box to stand on. So I really want to first thank you all for coming. I know it's the era, post-COVID era, where going out to events is still weird. So I really appreciate that all of you came. Sincere thanks to Zach, Meg, Anila, and Tracy for participating in today's events. And special thanks to the Leona M. and Harry B. Helmsley Charitable Trust, which has supported this project since it was first launched in 2015, especially Tracy and Tamara, if she's here. I think I saw her earlier. I'd also like to thank our web designer, LA-based artist Rostin Wu, and our developer, Cody Say. Their creativity, flexibility, expertise, and ability to understand what people want and need when they come to a site like this was a real inspiration to us throughout the process. The members of the advisory committee for Data2Go, whose names appear on the next slide, we're most grateful to you. Our longtime design partner, Elizabeth Pastor from Humantific. We have our former MOA colleagues who worked on the past Data2Go, especially Rebecca Gluskin and Laura Laterman. They've each made invaluable contributions to the project. We thank our colleagues at the Social Science Research Council, many of whom are here today. We thank our loved ones, who are all extremely relieved that this day has finally arrived. And we also wanted to thank all the data stewards who shared the information on Data2Go with us. So in every corner of New York City government, and in the federal government as well, are dedicated professionals who believe that public information is a public good and that access to it is a human right. So without them, this project would never have been possible. I want to again thank the amazing MOA team, and thank you, to our advisory panel. I also wanted to thank these other organizations that produce and distribute public data that's included in Data2Go. We've been working with some of these teams since 2014. We deeply appreciate these relationships. I also wanted to give a special mention to the late Gil Maduro. He was a research scientist at the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. We didn't realize it at the time, but while we were working with him to get the life expectancy data by neighborhood, he was actually gravely ill. And he spent some of his last days working on getting this data out to us and to the public. So it was really humbling, honestly, to have that happen on a project like this. But that kind of dedication reminds us that even in these quite scary times, there are still so many who understand the value, the necessity, actually, of public data for making the world a better place. It's what we believe. I think it's what all of you believe. So to be here today with all of you who clearly share this view is quite special. Before I wrap up, I'll just say that we are going to host some data clinics, as we did, the kind of data clinics that Meg was talking about earlier that we did. You can find out more about them with this QR code. I'll leave it up. And so basically, it will be 6 hour-and-a-half long courses over about 2 months. One live and then some virtual. And we're also going to have 2 more open to the public demos on May 15th and May 21st. So we have those, and you can find out more with this QR code. So yes, and you can also go to our website, measureofamerica.org. And you can actually reach any of us just at contact@Measure of America. We're a small team, as you see, so one of us will answer you. So thank you. Thank you so much for being here. It's been great to interact with all of you, and we're happy to answer your questions at the end. So thanks.
Great.